Not long ago, there was that viral freakout on the airplane with the lady claiming that a passenger on board was not real. It was a huge meltdown and it really caught the internet by storm. It was a wild situation that had everyone confused and giggling, but it also really tickled the curiosity bone of a lot of unhinged lunatics. I don't know how better to say that. I can't be more charitable than that. There were so many people that started to speculate that she was onto something. This was all a ploy from the deep state with their 15-minute city agenda where they're sneaking robot, android, soulless husks disguised as people on our airline flights. And only this woman was able to see behind the curtain for the truth of the matter, calling out a fake person. And it was just this crazy conspiracy web about how, like, she's actually correct, there are fake people on these planes and she's onto something. And then they even started making up their own fanfic about how she's missing, the government must have found her, tracked her down, taken her out behind the barn and put her down like a sick animal, like just executed her for revealing the truth and opening her third eye with the Sharingan. Just pure pandemonium. This opened Pandora's box of mental illness on Twitter in particular. But I'm happy to say we finally have closure. She was never missing. She's been totally fine, just a little embarrassed about the situation, and today released an apology video. That's right, an apology video. Not only that, but body cam footage of her escort out of the airport also dropped, so we really got the whole kit and caboodle on this case here. In the footage, she seems drunk, a bit belligerent, but that's not 100% confirmed. I wasn't there. I didn't run a fucking toxicology report or breathalyze her, have her walk a straight line or anything like that. But that's how it seems. Just using my astute little peepers here, that's the impression I get, is she may have been hitting the alcohol a little hard before going on the flight, which would help explain the outburst. So, I want to show you a little bit of both of these things, and also what sparked this whole incident was allegedly she had misplaced her AirPods, she lost them, and accused a fellow passenger of stealing them. So, she just started pointing the finger like, this nefarious, no good pile of shit just stole my AirPods, so he's not real, that motherfucker's not real. That's what started all of this, I guess. Anyway, let's check out the body cam footage and then we'll see the apology video. Also, what an incredible year for apology videos. This is like the 1,000th one that's dropped this year. If apology videos were a renewable energy source, we would be able to power the entire fucking globe from just this year's load of apology videos alone.
I don't care if I'm ever fly with y'all ever again. I want to know what happens to this flight right here.
Hey, this is the after action post-game report. It's me from the future. I'll go ahead and tell you what happened to that flight. It had a completely safe, uneventful, scheduled flight and landed at its destination A-OK. Despite what a couple of weirdos on Twitter were trying to circulate, the plane was totally fine. Nothing happened on the flight, aside from her getting escorted off and causing a major delay and a headache for all the passengers on board. It was totally fine. Like, everything turned out okay. It's not like she was some kind of prophet who predicted that the plane would have a problem.
Do not let that flight leave. Do not let that flight leave. Being dead serious. Do not let that flight leave. That flight's not going to make it to Orlando.
Let's go.
It's not going to. Can I just leave? You don't need to escort me out.
Yeah.
Can I just
You had your own warning. So, keep walking.
Oh yeah, until y'all see that fight blow up.
Okay.
It's clear she's very distressed, and it's also very clear that this is not a moment she's proud of. She made that much clear in her apology video as well. This is one of those very unfortunate things that was captured on camera, and we don't know exactly the cause, whether it was alcohol related or something else, but it is I do feel bad for her. In the modern age, everything gets filmed, so you're always going to see someone's lowest moment if it happens in public. That's just the way the world works now. And I was thinking about this when watching her apology video. I have a phobia of flying. If I happened to be in the airport, or heaven forbid, on the aircraft when this happened, I probably would have had an even larger outburst and freakout that would have eclipsed hers. I would have stole the spotlight because I would have been fucking losing my mind. If this lady stood up and started saying the plane's going down, that motherfucker's not real, all rational thoughts going out my noodle. I'm waving my arms around, I'm fucking screaming. I'm gonna sound like Donnie out of the Wild Thornberrys. Like just begging to get off of the plane. But anyway, let me show you her apology video. But before getting into it, I want to mention something. A lot of people I guess, either recognized her or found information about her. Well, I'm guessing found information about her because she mentions that it was pretty invasive how people, like, got a hold of her information. People figured out that she's a marketing executive. So there was another narrative that spun like a week or two ago about how this whole thing was actually just a publicity stunt. And I just want to knock on your empty little noggin here and try and figure out how you could ever run with such a delusional idea. This is a horrible publicity stunt. That wouldn't do any good for her or her company. She's not advertising anything. She's not putting a product out there in front of people's eyes. This is pretty clearly not an attention-seeking publicity stunt for her marketing company. Like, I don't know how anyone would even think for a second that that's a plausible explanation. Just sit down for a moment, really just marinate in your swamp ass and form an individual thought. Why would this be a publicity stunt? Like, damn near landing on the no-fly list? For what? Like, there's nothing good that comes out of this for her. So I don't know how anyone thought that somehow we had all been had. They pulled the rug out from under us. They bamboozled us. This was all just a marketing agency's calculated play. Somehow. It's so dumb. So fucking dumb. I wanted to mention that real quick. Anyway, here's her apology video.
As you know, I have been unwilling to speak on the viral video, but I do finally feel that it's time. First and foremost, I want to take full accountability for my actions. They were completely unacceptable. And I want to apologize to everyone on that plane, especially those that had children aboard. Can't imagine going through that and trying to explain to your kid what in the world just happened.
Overall, I think this was a totally fine apology video. It seems like she's very regretful of the whole thing because obviously this was very public. And she just apologizes to everyone involved in the situation. She takes accountability. She seems sincere. I don't have any real criticism or critique of the apology itself. I don't know where I'd put it on the internet apology tier list, but I think overall she did a fine job of coming forward and just being like, yeah, you know, we all have some very bad moments. Unfortunately, mine was very public and captured on camera for the whole world to see in fucking 4K, right? Like, it's just unfortunate circumstances. She also does mention that she found a lot of the memes that spawned from this to be comical, but then also mentions that there was a disturbing invasion of her privacy as well. Understandable to be upset about something like that too, for sure. So it's nice that she did come forward to finally put an end to all of like the conspiracy theories surrounding this situation. She didn't really go into detail on exactly what happened. So even the whole AirPod theory is still, I guess, speculation since it didn't come from her in this apology video. But it is nice that she came forward to clear the air a little bit here and hopefully put the kibosh on all these weird conspiracy theories surrounding the situation. It's not like she had to come forward, like obligated to make an internet statement. By no means did she need to do this, but it is appreciated that she did decide to, just to issue some kind of statement on the whole thing since so many people were captivated by it. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of go over the situation here because now there's some closure to all of it. That's really about it. So yep. Yesterday, iDubbbz posted a YouTube video that's become extremely divisive. I haven't seen people this divided on a singular topic since the red and blue dress debate. The video he posted was basically an apology for the content he made in the past, apologizing for it being hurtful or damaging, and a whole myriad of other things that he wanted to come forward with, and talking about how he's changed as a person and thus his content will be changing. He goes over like insecurities of his past, and overall he just invites the audience into the back of the kitchen to see how the sausage is made and meet the chef. And for a lot of people, they didn't want to meet the chef. He's being very open and honest about his feelings on his older self and now his current mentality, how he feels better and healthier and doesn't like what he did in the past and didn't like who he used to be. So it's a whole apology video for all of that. He releases more feelings in this video than Pandora's box, and I kind of want to go over this whole situation because I have a lot of thoughts on the topic, not only as it pertains to iDubbbz in particular, but just in the general creator space. There's a few things that I want to talk about here.
For a while, I felt like if I changed my content over time, that people would see that as a reflection of who I am and what I value. But I'm starting to realize that that is a very weak and passive way to, run my channel and live my life.
I'm sorry to immediately come in here with the Phoenix Wright objection, but I completely disagree with the sentiment that it's weak or passive to change your content and expect people to see that as a reflection of yourself. That's pretty much the optimal way of handling any kind of situation in which you're not comfortable with either your audience or the content you've been making. By changing the content over time, you're changing the audience over time as well, obviously, right? The people that subscribed for your previous catalog of content might not stick around for the stuff you start creating when it goes in a different direction, and that's a totally fine thing. I don't think there's anything weak about just making different content and growing individually without having to come forward and share that growth with your audience. At the end of the day, your subscribers aren't your friends. You don't know them and they don't know you. That's the brass tacks of it. Sorry to blast the cold water in your face first thing in the morning. You don't owe them an explanation for why you're changing your content. You're welcome to tell them. I think that's totally within your right to do. But I really disagree that it's weak if you don't explain why you're changing your content. You can just make different stuff and go in that direction where you're happier without ever really needing to come forward and like really lecture on why.
I think I should have the balls to make an apology video and take accountability for the mistakes I've made. So that's what this video is. I am responsible for creating a lot of hurtful and damaging content on this channel. And I've also created a culture of apathy and I don't know, a lot of like cruelty as well. Like, some of the videos I've made have been very not edgy. I don't think they some of these videos were edgy. I think they were just outright cruel.
It sucks to hear that this is how he thinks about his old content and his old self. It's always a very difficult realization when you look back on, the you of a few years ago disappointed. Like, I used to be 5'6", and I still am, but it sucks to realize that I was then too, and have been for a long time. Point is, he wasn't happy with the content he made or the person he was, and now he's trying to apologize for the videos he made. And I, once again, have to completely disagree with the way he looks at it. I feel like his perspective on it is very warped by the way the internet has evolved over the years. The way he talks about this content makes it sound like he used to fucking murder puppies for these videos, which it was never that extreme. I very much would consider it edgy. It was 2016 edginess in all of its glory. That was entirely the brand. And for its time, it lived peacefully. All four nations, water, earth, fire, air, lived together in harmony with all this edginess going on. Now, obviously, times have changed, and he has changed. He's gotten older. He's in his 30s now. In your 30s, it's not exactly entertaining to just be spamming slurs for shock humor. I don't find that entertaining, and he doesn't either. So it's totally fine to want to distance yourself from making content like that. But I don't think it was a mistake that he made those videos. Like, they're not hurtful, nor do I really think they're damaging. Now, you could make an argument that they were hurtful to the people they were about, like the content cop on Tana or Leafy or any of that. You could say, like, he hurt their feelings or sent harassment their way, which may have been a mental burden on them, and you could feel bad about that, I suppose. But at the end of the day, I don't think the goal of his content was ever to be hurtful or damaging. He was just trying to entertain and using edginess as shock humor, which for its time was acceptable online. Now, whether or not you think that's okay that it was ever acceptable, that's a different argument for a different day. But the point is, the point of his content wasn't to be hateful or hurtful. He really was just trying to entertain. At least that's how I and the majority of people viewed it. So I just don't think that the apology is really warranted. You can explain, like, I just don't like making that content anymore, so I won't. And be like, hey, I even regret making that content because it's kind of cringe now. That's all fine, but to think that it is this huge, massive problem, like you made an unforgivable mistake, is a little weird to me.
So I don't want people to, get it confused about, where I stand. I have made some cruel, hurtful content, and I need to acknowledge that, and I'm really sorry that it's taken me this long to acknowledge it. The content I'm talking about specifically are content cop videos and videos where I was just generally criticizing people for very lackluster reasons. and you know, obviously didn't have any accountability online whatsoever on my end.
You shouldn't have to apologize for criticizing someone or something. Voicing your opinion on a subject is a totally natural thing to do. I get criticized, I criticize others, people criticize movies, games, music, all of that. And to try and vilify the idea of criticism being evil, I think is a little dangerous, because then you just create these echo chambers and no one ever really grows from that. I think it's totally fine if you regret the way you criticize things, the way you approach the subjects. If you regret how you handled it, that's okay. However, I wouldn't necessarily say that you were picking apart people for lackluster things. You seem to really look back negatively on all of the content cops, but whether you like it or not, you did make good points and good arguments against people who did deserve criticism. I feel like the main pain point of those videos he used to make is the slurs in them. Like, his catchphrase was 2 slurs strung together, right? Like, that's not exactly something to be super proud of. I get that. But to go back and say, like, all of it's shit, all of it's, you know, bad and cruel, I think is going way overboard, because it's not. I don't think any of it was cruel. I don't think the criticism was unwarranted, but it's fine to just regret the way you handled it to a certain extent without saying all the content was damaging or cruel or bad.
I was morally grandstanding and acting as if I am any better than any of these people that I was making content cop videos on, and I'm not. I'm a human. I'm a real human who makes mistakes, and, you know, I make a different set of mistakes than the people I was making videos on, but it doesn't matter. I don't think anyone deserves that level of cruelty or hate. It's also indoctrinated a lot of people into thinking that this is an okay way to behave, and it's not.
I feel like there's a chance he may have been hit by a Men in Black neuralizer and had his memories rewritten of what that content actually was, because I never got the impression from those videos that he was morally grandstanding or that he was trying to pitch himself as superior to them morally. He never really tried to make himself seem like he was better than them. In fact, he would multiple times point out, like, his problems as well, and even give them advice on how they could have attacked him better in response, giving them ammo if they wanted to use against him. It all seemed very self-aware, not from like a moral grandstanding perspective, but just you were lending criticism in a goofy way to entertain your audience as well as provide legitimate points for why these people are doing bad things or have done bad things. For example, making a content cop on Leafy and bullying him the same way he'd bully the people in his videos, right? Like, that's not exactly the most cruel thing in the world. It's just making a point and making that point entertaining to your audience.
I am very insecure about my ability to create interesting content or like entertain. It's gotten better over the years, but it's something that I have struggled with constantly, and it's one of the reasons why I, kept making this hurtful content. You do interpret that as an excuse, but I hope that that is relatable to other creators who maybe struggle with the same thing.
Now, this subject right here is something that extends beyond the iDubbbz situation. It's the insecurity, especially with a creator who's found a lot of success with one branch of content, that fearfulness to try other things because you don't know how to be perceived and you're a little worried about your ability to even deliver something that's not the norm that your audience is used to. That's a very honest look into that mentality, and you see it all the time on the platform with people that have found success in one niche and they never leave it. And that's because there's always that fear that if you do, you'll lose your audience or you'll just not be good at it. So most people live in the exact same style of content forever. And that's how I was for like the first 8 or 9 years of this channel, doing nothing but gameplay and commentary videos, spouting the word nipple and titty and cum as much as I possibly could within the first 2 minutes and throughout the rest of the video. But eventually, you do take a risk and you try other things, and I always think that's the most fulfilling thing a creator can do, which is branch out from their niche. At least to try it, dip your toes in the deep end of that pool and give it a whirl.
I was being very bigoted in a lot of my videos, and I justified it because, I didn't think it was too serious. And I thought that people were going to see that I had good intentions, but that's so silly, Casual racism is still racism. Casual bigotry is still bigotry. And, I said a lot of things that I look back at and I cringe now, and I'm like, that is an awful thing to say.
This I completely understand. That is totally normal to look back on that and cringe, right? In your 30s and really any age over 16, you're not exactly going to be getting a hearty ho 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 belly laugh just hearing a bunch of slurs being spammed. Real life isn't Call of Duty lobbies. I don't think many people in the real world are going to be like laughing and fist pumping hearing you just shout slurs as comedy. So that makes sense to look back on that and cringe. However, none of your videos came from a place of hate. At least I don't think so. I don't think you were ever a racist or a bigot or anything like that. You used those words for shock humor. That was the whole goal, the edgy shock humor of using those words. And you made it pretty clear that that was kind of your drive. And he does mention it in this video with the it's either all okay or none of it's okay mentality. But I really think most people were able to recognize that the things he was saying weren't coming from a place of legitimate hate. Now, you can of course still say that it's unacceptable that he was using slurs for shock humor and punchlines in his videos for the jokes. That's a totally fair perspective to have. But it's still, I think, a little ridiculous to make it seem like it was this big of a deal that it warranted a whole apology video in which he makes it seem like he'll never truly find forgiveness and he'll never forgive himself for it, for saying the slurs in the videos and making the content he did. Because again, like, he's talking about it like he's a fucking reformed racist, like he was actually a racist and now he's not, when I don't think that was the case. He was an edgelord, and that's it. I feel like this whole video could have just been summed up very easily like, hey guys, it was fucking 2016. I was edgy, and now I think it's cringy, so I don't want to do that anymore, and we're closing the book. That, you know, we're shutting that chapter down, putting the kibosh on it. Now we're doing some other stuff. And that would have been a totally fine explanation. A lot of people would have still would have been disappointed, of course, in his audience that liked that content. But at the end of the day, you shouldn't feel like a prisoner to your audience. You should make what makes you happiest to create. Like, I don't think you should have felt obligated to make this video. Like, I don't think this situation was so damaging that it warranted this kind of, like, fucking presidential press conference here over it and apologizing for the content you made back then. You know, I don't think, like, you ruined lives because you made Content Cop. I don't think you made an entire generation of racists and bigots because you use slurs for shock humor. I think that's a very bastardized perspective of how people digest content online. Now, I have no doubt that his audience did cultivate some weirdo losers that probably were real racists somewhere in there that didn't really care about his message and just liked that he was saying the N-word. I have no doubt that that existed in his community. But I don't think that was his goal, and there's always going to be weirdo losers. Of course, you can do your best to mitigate those people from feeling welcome in your community, but that all starts with just changing the content over time. Again, that's not a weak thing to do. That is not a weak or passive approach. The vilifying of your own audience and your previous content, I don't think is the right way of even looking at the content you used to make or the audience that you had. Of course, there were bad actors in there, but not everyone was. And to make them feel like they were if they liked your content is a little weird. And I don't think that's the goal of this video by any means, but it does come across that way. Like, you weren't a bad person if you were laughing at his content cops or anything like that. And I don't think he was a bad person for making those content cops in the first place.
I shouldn't be able to just make an apology video and walk away from it. This is something that I should live the rest of my life with, and I expect to. I've profited off of this bigoted content for years, and I've made a successful career out of it, and that's not right. I think that this is only a step in the right direction, and I know that a lot more needs to be done to even approach a life that I would think would be like acceptable.
You don't deserve to be fucking publicly flogged with tomatoes thrown at you for the rest of your life and skinned alive because you made edgy videos in 2016, man. It's just not that big of a deal. It feels horrible hearing this from him, knowing that it weighs so heavily on his mind that he made these videos, so he feels like he's a real piece of shit for doing it. You just made edgy YouTube videos. You didn't ruin anybody's life. You didn't create a fucking army of racists and bigots. The content itself isn't bigoted content either. You used edgy shock humor. And I don't think that makes you a bigot that you're going to have to atone for those sins for the rest of your life over.
I am running ads on this video, and any revenue generated from this video, I'm going to match and donate to an organization that would have been particularly affected by the type of rhetoric that I've been spewing on this channel. And again, this isn't the end of what I'm doing. This is just the start.
You'll get no complaints from me here. I'm always on the side of helping people, so anything charitable, I'm always for. Though I don't think it was necessary or anything, I still think that's a nice gesture regardless. But he uses the word rhetoric here. And that again makes it sound like these videos were coming from like a legitimate racist, which I don't think they were. I really don't. At least I don't want to believe that iDubbbz used to be a racist and he was using that to try and propel his beliefs forward. He really it seems like he was really just using these words as shock humor, which is cringy, sure, very cringy, and that is absolutely fine to point out. But it doesn't strike me as something that was genuinely ruining people's lives hearing that kind of shit. It's just kind of like an eye-rolling thing to look back on now, like, ugh, that's fucking lame. And that's really it. I just don't think it goes too much deeper than that. Like I said, I have no doubt there really were some dangerous weirdos that did hold dangerous beliefs in his community. But I don't think he made them. I think they were there when they found his content to begin with, and they stuck around because they just liked hearing the edgy words spoken out loud. That's it. I don't think he made them. He wasn't the Frankenstein to their monster. Now, I don't want to just keep dissecting every single piece of the video here. I want to kind of branch this out into a broader talking point about when a creator starts to resent the audience and community they've fostered. Because that's fundamentally what's happened here. iDubbbz has grown up now. He doesn't like what he made when he was younger, and he doesn't like the audience that he made along the way, along the journey. He mentions a couple of times in the videos, like some of these eureka moments where he's like, man, this is really fucking frustrating the people that are in my audience. Well, he doesn't blatantly say that, but he tells a couple anecdotes about, going to conventions and meeting fans and it being kind of like this mirror held up to him that he didn't like the reflection of. And that's a very interesting and unfortunately pretty common thing to have happen online, where someone spends a long time building their brand and building their audience. And as they grow, they start to really resent the audience that they have. And usually this comes in one of two forms, where you have someone like Darkside Phil. I've used him as an example before, but he has an audience that he doesn't seem to really like, but he needs them because they pay his bills. So he has to constantly keep doing the same things in order to keep the lights on. And I imagine he feels trapped by his viewers because he has to keep doing this song and dance in order to get the money from them, but doesn't like what he's doing. And it also happens to other creators as well who spend a long time building their identity online, but they don't like what they're doing and they don't like the people that are watching them. So then they try and make some kind of change and then get eaten alive by their community, which only further reinforces their disdain for them, which leads to a really toxic community where everyone's at each other's throats. There's countless examples of that. Point is, that experience online is all too common. And when it does happen, a creator's left with a choice. They either just suck it up and keep making the shit that they clap for, even though it doesn't make them happy and they don't like the audience that's clapping for them, or they try and change the content and grow a different kind of audience, which is always the scarier option. That's always the more uncertain one, because maybe no one likes it, and now you've lost that audience you built up, and now your career is in jeopardy. You might not be able to keep the lights on by doing this career anymore, because now you've alienated them, gone in a different direction, and it hasn't worked out. So the majority of creators in this position just kind of suck it up, rub some dirt in it, and just keep doing the same shit over and over, even if it makes them miserable. And that's why you'll see a lot of creators burn out. So I'll always respect the creators that choose the harder path here of pivoting and changing their content, doing what makes them happier, even if it means taking that huge risk of losing the audience you've built up over time. Even though I disagree with iDubbbz's perspective on his older content being damaging or dangerous or indoctrinating, I still do respect that he didn't like what he was doing, so now he's doing something that he likes more. Even though it is coming at the risk of losing his audience, he'll find happiness in the content that he makes going forward, and maybe he's happier with the new audience that he potentially cultivates through all of it. So, but anyway, just kind of wanted to talk about this whole situation. That's about it. So, yeah. Well, now, hold on a second there, partner. Why don't you step into the saloon here for a little chit-chat? I've noticed we've got ourselves a little bit of a sour hootenanny on our hands here after my latest video on the iDubbbz situation. It's being hailed as a big L take from old Charles White here, and in the cyberspace, an L take is criminal, and the punishment for the crime is 1,000 different labels. So, there's a lot to talk about after the latest upload, so let's just go ahead and dive into it. I gave my opinion on the iDubbbz apology video, same thing every single person in the world with a keyboard has done over the last 24 hours, and this isn't shocking new content for me. I pretty much opine on everything everywhere that happens on the internet, even if it's like fucking 30-year-old drama from an extinct MMO that I found on a subreddit last week. If I find it either entertaining or if I have a lot to say about it, I'll usually make a video on it just because I kind of treat my channel like a diary, so I vomit out my thoughts. And not everyone's going to agree with them, and people shouldn't agree with everything that I say, because everyone should be their own individual. For a long time now, I've said how dangerous I feel echo chambers are, so I've never wanted my channel to become one of those. And I don't think it has. I know people will disagree, but there's been plenty of instances over the years where I've said things that people disagree with. I think disagreeing with someone is extremely healthy and important. I wouldn't want a community that doesn't think for themselves and just blindly agrees with everything I say without giving it any thought of their own. And in this case, people have disagreed with my perspective on the iDubbbz situation. For those that don't know, I'll quickly break it down. iDubbbz made an apology video yesterday where he talked about how deeply he regrets the content he used to make and how he views it as being just horrible, and that he's very sorry for all of the things that he put out there in the world and the pain that he caused through the content. And that's become a very divisive topic. And I gave my perspective on it. And since then, people have done some very uncharitable interpretations of what I've been saying, and I guess I can't really blame them. If I'm not abundantly clear with where I stand on things, I've learned that everything gets lost with ambiguity, and people run with the absolute most negative narrative they can find, and the wildest ways to misconstrue some statements. So I actually can't even be mad about that. I recognize that's my own shortcoming, and this is something that's happened in the past, where when I make a video, I know my intention. I know what I believe and where I stand. But you guys don't. You're not like a little ghost or a spirit over my shoulder that's watching me make a video or in my little noodle up here when I'm delivering my thoughts. Which means it's my responsibility to make my intentions known and clear. And I don't always fully convey it effectively. So I definitely think that's played some role here in how everything's been playing out with people talking about me on Twitch and on Reddit and Twitter, but not fully. There's definitely going to be some people that are going to look like Eustace from Courage the Cowardly Dog when he gets that gel that he puts in his hair that makes him really mad and his eyes pop out of his skull and his head explodes, because there are just going to be some things that I believe that other people aren't. And that's okay. But what I don't appreciate and what really gets my ass twisted is people labeling me horrible things on a complete misunderstanding of what I actually believe. Or them just making up things that I believe, or putting their whole ass in my mouth and filling it with words that I've never said or even came close to trying to express. So let's get into it. By far the biggest thing I'm seeing from the online discussion around my video is people saying that I was attacking iDubbbz for trying to grow, and that I wanted him to stay in that 2016 edgy era. And my take was that of a 30-year-old man with a 15-year-old's brain who still giggles and loves edgy humor from yesteryear. When nothing could be further from the truth. A, I'm not 30. I'm 28 years old, and fucking shame on you, you disgusting swine, for insinuating that I'm pushing 30. I'm 28 years young. And B, it makes me feel like you didn't even bother watching the video, because I don't know how that could even come across at all. I'll quickly just play a small snippet from the end here, which I imagine a lot of people talking about this didn't even get to. So I really feel like throughout the video I made it clear that the edgy shit is lame and cringy. And that's something to absolutely regret. Now, obviously, times have changed, and he has changed. He's gotten older. He's in his 30s now. In your 30s, it's not exactly entertaining to just be spamming slurs for shock humor. I don't find that entertaining, and he doesn't either. So it's totally fine to want to distance yourself from making content like that. And that I was also supportive of him wanting to change and grow his content in a different direction. I still do respect that he didn't like what he was doing, so now he's doing something that he likes more. Even though it is coming at the risk of losing his audience, he'll find happiness in the content that he makes going forward, and maybe he's happier with the new audience that he potentially cultivates through all of it. So I had a whole section in the video about how important I find it that content creators branch out. Instead of just living in a niche and staying locked down by their audience and their expectations, how they shouldn't just keep doing a song and dance that doesn't make them happy. They should be trying to grow and change as a person and as a content creator and changing their content. I had a whole fucking section about that, talking about it outside of even just the iDubbbz perspective here. So I don't really know how that one got so fucked up here with this whole discussion around my video. The point of my video was never to attack the idea that someone growing and regretting things they've done in their past is a bad thing. I really thought I made that clear, but I must have missed the mark since so many people are saying that the whole core component of my video is to attack the fact that he's apologizing for personal growth and doing things that make him happy, which I never meant to convey, and if that's what came across, then I'm sorry that I missed the mark so drastically. I really feel like multiple times I called out that it's completely normal and fine to regret the shit you said in those videos and want to distance yourself from that content in general. Like, that makes a lot of sense, and I talked about him making different content that makes him happier and how that's great. Like, you should never feel like a prisoner to your audience to keep delivering something that doesn't make you happy. That was one of the broader talking points I used in that video, but people are acting like I never said that and that I wanted him to stay doing the same shit from 2016, which of course I was never arguing for. Now, the next biggest thing by far is me saying that I don't think the apology was warranted. Warrant maybe wasn't the right word, since that's the one a lot of people are really like underlining and highlighting and giving me an F on the book report for. So to explain what I meant, when I'm saying I don't think the apology was warranted, I'm saying I don't think him being a product of edgy internet culture is necessarily something that should have been weighing on his mind so heavily for the last fucking 7 years that he's lived with this constant guilt, this burden on his shoulders where he's feeling as though he created edgy internet culture. The way he talked about in this video really made me feel very bad for him, that he's had this kind of looming disgust at the man he used to be because he partook in edgy internet culture, which wasn't just him. His channel wasn't the genesis of edginess. He didn't create it, he was molded by it, like fucking Bane from Batman. And I feel as though the content he used to make did have a message. He wasn't coming from a place of genuine hatefulness. I don't think he was ever like a real racist or an actual bigot. So when I said I don't think the apology's warranted, what I mean is I don't think what he did was so damaging and scarring to the online space or individuals that for 7 years he's needed to carry this guilt where he felt obligated to finally apologize for it. If people really thought he held these racist, bigoted beliefs, I don't think many people would have been signing up for Creator Clash 1 and 2, right? Like, this is the first time he's publicly acknowledged it and fully apologized for it. He's, of course, talked about distancing himself from it on podcasts, but this is the first time he's really owned up to it publicly. But I think most people knew he wasn't like this evil, racist person. So what I was saying is I just don't think what he did gave a ton of people the impression that he really was a horrible, racist, bigoted person. Now, I used the word obligated to apologize just a moment ago. And that's what I went into the video thinking the motivation was. Like, you know, after all this time, people pointing out, like, the use of slurs in those videos have made them age fucking horribly. You know, this isn't acceptable. You know, it's time you own up to your past sins. That's what I thought it was. But after listening to what people have said since I posted my video and diving a bit more into like the actual discussion in general online, I failed to really understand that maybe iDubbbz also treated this video like a diary where he just wanted to get everything off his chest with how he feels about it. So I completely misunderstood what the motivation could have been for this video, and for that, I'm sorry. The goal wasn't to attack the whole idea of an apology for content you regret. That was never my intention. So if this is truly like a very personal thing where he wants to just finally move on from this, and in order to do that, he wanted to make this video publicly addressing how he feels about all of it, then that's totally understandable. That's absolutely understandable. And I may have had like the wrong lens of viewing the video in the first place, since I may have got the wrong idea about what was even driving the video to begin with. But now I do want to explain, I still do believe that iDubbbz was never a bad person for the content cops he made. That edgy shock humor was very much a 2016 trend. That whole era with slurs being used willy-nilly for cheap shock humor was not uncommon on the internet. And I don't know why people think that I'm trying to harken back to the glory days of being able to use a bunch of slurs all over the place. I've never fucking said that. I think in the last video, what gave people that idea is I said 2016 era shock humor in all its glory. So they thought that I was trying to celebrate the golden days or something. But I've never ever spoken support for that kind of edgy shit. I've always openly made fun of that whole idea. Even back in the era, I always found it pretty lame for the most part. So that might have just been a misunderstanding of my sarcasm when saying in all its glory in the last video, but I want to make that clear. But anyway, him using these slurs for cheap shock humor in the content cops is embarrassing and something to genuinely regret and look back on like, damn, I fucked that up. Absolutely. And I said that in the last video too. They were videos that were meant to criticize people that did deserve criticism. One thing iDubbbz said in his video that I still very much disagree with is that he made videos criticizing people based on lackluster reasons. I very much vehemently disagree with that. The people he did make content on were worthy of being criticized and called out for bad actions and being highlighted for horrible things they've done. And in doing so, iDubbbz attempted to entertain his audience, and one of the ways he tried to entertain them was through this shock humor with his slurs. Like I said, his catchphrase being two slurs strung together is nothing to be proud of. So looking back on that component of content cops negatively and regretting that is a completely understandable and normal thing to do. Now, he did mention something that I also disagreed with initially, but after reading more, maybe I'm just too naive to really have a full grasp on it. I said that I don't think that content is indoctrinating, meaning I don't think him making those videos with the shock humor would lead to people thinking that all of a sudden it's okay to start using a ton of slurs, in the real world or around people or in general, right? I didn't think that, but I also failed to recognize that in 2016, I was still in my fucking 20s. Which is sad to think that I'm basically a fossil now. I wasn't a child during this period, so I don't know what effect this might have had on younger viewers of his. Maybe I'm very wrong in that it did serve as like a fucking gateway drug into racism or something. That is possible. I don't know. And that's what a lot of people did point out that I think is a great point. I was already old enough to recognize that he was never advocating for legitimate racism or bigotry or anything like that. That was never his message. But younger people may not have picked up on that. So I do believe it is possible that he did have a very negative effect on how a lot of the youth perceived slurs and maybe the willingness to use them. That is possible. And I'm sorry that I didn't consider that angle. I failed to realize that I was still pretty fucking old when the content cops were, hitting the cyberspace. So obviously, if you inadvertently became a lightning rod for real racists, that's fucking horrible. Now, I do still believe that his Content Cop series was not a cruel series. Like I said, the whole message behind it was pointing out some horrible things that people have done, and you delivered a message of here's why that shit's bad, and you coded your message with things meant to entertain, but in doing so, you delivered some bad shit along the way with the edgy shock slurs that were thrown in so loosey-goosey throughout the content. But I don't think that changes the actual message of what the video meant to convey. And it was never a message of cruelty. It was always a message of these people are doing bad, and these are people in very influential positions who probably shouldn't be. I don't think that is a bad message. I don't think there's anything cruel about what you were aiming to do. Another thing that always comes up in situations like this is them saying, you cut out important details on purpose, maliciously leaving out information that's crucial. And I always hate that. Like, I'm not just gonna play the entire video and go through each and everything. I just played the ones that I really wanted to focus on for the general point that I was trying to get across, which was A, growing and changing your content is always a good thing, and it makes complete sense why iDubbbz would regret the edginess from those videos and would regret some of the big components of those videos. Like, I don't understand how all of that got so mixed up. Like, yes, I do disagree that the content was cruel, as I just explained, but the core message is still, changing is a good thing, always has been, and I've always preached for that. Instead of just living in a niche forever and making yourself miserable doing the same thing forever, changing, growing as a person, and adapting is always great. And he had legitimate things to be regretful of. The edginess, the shock humor, inexcusably cringe, lame, not good. The remaining parts of his apology video were topics that I totally understood his perspective of. I totally got it. But none of them were what I was focusing on for what I was saying about the whole subject. For example, he mentions fan interaction where he met a couple fans and it helped him understand that, damn, my content is really giving people a certain vibe or a certain impression of me that just isn't true. So it helped like show him that there were a lot of things in the content that were regrettable, that he regretted. Like, I get that, like I totally understand it. And I didn't exclude them from my video as a way of like manipulating a narrative or trying to hide it or anything. They were just things I totally understood, but they weren't part of like the overall talking point that I was trying to discuss. In the last video, I mentioned that I didn't feel his content created the weirdo losers that disregard the message of the content and instead focused on just the slurs, right? Like a bunch of like actual bad actors who are just there to celebrate the fact that iDubbbz would say the bad words, the real off-limits stuff, the slurs. That's all they cared about. I said I have no doubt that those community members exist, but I didn't think his content created them. You know, I felt like, you know, like bacteria, they just happened to already be there and then found his content and then found a home there to keep celebrating that shit. But just like I mentioned a little while ago, I'm most likely wrong about this. I saw the content when I was in my 20s. I could see the satire in it. I assume the majority of other people could, but I didn't even take into consideration that a lot of the viewers were younger, and there's a very good chance that this content was their first exposure to it, and it may have led to them becoming those weirdo losers. Not necessarily that the weirdo losers had always existed since the beginning of time and then just found his content. There is a very high likelihood that it also just created that atmosphere with those kind of audience members as well, which is something iDubbbz would obviously want to distance himself from. I think that was most of the things people were talking about in relation to my video on the subject, so hopefully I cleared up any misconceptions about where I stand or what I believe. And I'm sorry if things got real lost somehow. I want to make it clear once again, I was never attacking iDubbbz for apologizing for regretting his content or for wanting to change and grow and do different things. I really thought I voiced support for those things, but I must not have done it effectively. So that's on me, and hopefully this gave all of my perspectives on it much more clarity. That's about it. See ya.
This episode was brought to you by Opera GX.
We all love YouTuber apologies, and if you're thinking to yourself, Charlie, I don't like YouTuber apologies, well then you're lying to yourself, and more importantly, you're lying to me and you make me sick to my fucking stomach, make me want to spit. Everybody loves YouTuber apologies. It's a timeless classic and a staple on the internet. Nobody says I'm sorry more than YouTubers. YouTubers apologize more than a child whose parents just caught him with his hand in the cookie jar. So today I'll be looking at some famous YouTuber apologies and slapping them on a tier list, so get a box of tissues out because some of these are real tear jerkers. The first apology we'll be looking at is actually historically significant. It is the Fine Brothers React apology. This was kind of the progenitor of YouTube apologies and really set the bar low, extremely low, for every apology that would soon follow, and it really just kind of kicked everything off, really the genesis of YouTubers apologizing. Now, the Fine Brothers React channel is kind of like a fossil these days, because luckily people have finally stopped watching that god-awful show, And in 2016, the Fine Brothers were at the height of their popularity. The React series is basically where they just take random people, kids, teens, adults, sit them down and show them memes, and then ask them one question: what did you think of the video? And that's the entire show, and it went on for years, and it used to be super popular when the internet was still this magical, mystical thing nobody understood. And the Fine Brothers, in all of their greed, with little dollar signs in their eyes like Mr. Krabs, decided, let's copyright this. The Fine Brothers themselves are personality-less androids, and when they saw the YouTube community start to react to content, they began to panic and get a little swamp ass going in their diaper with cold sweat. So they did what they thought was the only play they could do: try and capitalize off it by copywriting the React format, because all they have is the React format, because they can't rely on themselves actually like being entertaining, so they just pull in random people to react to shit. And react is the wrong word, because the people just sit there silently and then say, yep, video was good. It's dog shit. I've never liked the React series, but that's what they had. And when other people were reacting to videos and adding personality to them, they wanted to get their fingers into that pie. So they wanted to copyright it, and you'd have to go through them for their React format, they called it. And it just led to this whole big mess where the internet was outraged. Like, how can you trademark and copyright reacting to something and making jokes about something? Like, they don't own that. And in their announcement about it with React World, they just used very vague terms which scared everyone, that made them think they were going to strike down any videos that reacted to anything. And it was just a huge mess. And they never really did a good job explaining it, but they did do an apology where they basically just said it's your fault for not understanding our huge IQ play. And in their apology video, they come off extremely insincere and like Tommy Wiseau levels of acting. The Fine Bros have actually made a movie of their own called F the Prom, and it's a terrible fucking movie, and it looked like this was an audition for roles in the movie from these two. It is really poorly acted, it seems, and it just came across as like 3 minutes of them just blaming the audience. And they even said things like, we should have used simpler analogies to help you better understand what was going on, making it sound like everyone was just so fucking dumb that we couldn't quite comprehend their galaxy brain analogies, and they needed to put it in simpler terms for us, like, oh, imagine React content is the vegetable paste on your mother's spoon, and she's flying the airplane into your mouth, and that mouth is the React world. You know, it was just a garbage apology, and for that, I'm giving it a nice B tier. Because on the tier list of YouTuber apologies, I think this one is historically significant. I genuinely believe this was where it all started. This was the patient zero of YouTuber apologies, and they did an incredible job of setting the tone for how shitty YouTuber apologies would be from this point forward. But one thing you'll never have to feel sorry about is your web browser. I'm talking today about a new browser called Opera GX, which is the first web browser designed for gamers, with gamers at the forefront of every design choice. Now, I'm not saying that using Opera GX is going to improve your KD and make you a world championship in your favorite esports game. I'm just saying if you do happen to improve your KD and become a world champion while using Opera GX, it's probably not a coincidence. Opera GX has a ton of changes to classic web browsers that make it much better for gaming performance. For example, let's say you're kicking back and having a hard gaming session, you have a ton of tabs open on Chrome, some of them are playing music. That can oftentimes lag your game and just tank the performance, but that's not going to happen with Opera GX. With a feature called GX Control, you can have a bunch of tabs open without hurting your gaming performance. The panel lets users limit their CPU or RAM that they're willing to let their browser use. And there's also a network limiter, which limits network bandwidth used by Opera GX so you can gain performance in games and streams. There's Twitch and Discord integration, which allows you to log in directly to those accounts just from the sidebar of the browser. And you can design and customize the Opera GX browser. And another really cool feature is the Force Dark Pages functionality, which just puts pages you visit into dark mode so you're not just blasted by blinding light from some of the pages you visit. So if you're interested in trying Opera GX, you can click the link in the description below to get started. Next up is Tana Mojo. I don't really know why people watch her or what content she even makes. 3 out of every 4 videos she uploads is her apologizing for some more terrible dumb shit that she does. She's pretty much a magnet for every bad decision you can make online put into one person. She's done a lot of racist shit in her past. She had TanaCon, which was a complete disaster, where she like rented out a small lobby in a hotel next to a dumpster or something, and then people had to like snake around outside in the scorching heat and people were getting heat stroke. And then when she finally showed up, all she did was like twerk for 30 seconds and leave, and nobody got what they were promised, and it was a terrible disaster. So she apologized for that for like 8 videos, and like 6 of them were a Shane Dawson documentary series on it. I mean, Her entire channel is like the Netflix of apologies. It would be impossible to choose one for the tier list. So I'm just going to put Tana Mongeau on here as like an actual person, because she is like a singularity for which all drama is sucked in and then turned into a terrible fucking apology. So Tana Mongeau is going to sit on this tier list at a comfortable A tier. Tana Mongeau is constantly apologizing, giving apology enthusiasts tons of content to work with. She's apologizing for heinous shit that she's done, because she continues to do terrible, horrible things. So she's got more terrible and horrible things to apologize for, and she does it horribly. I mean, it is this incredible cycle of continuing to make mistakes and not taking responsibility for them, but pretending that you kind of did. It's incredible. So when it comes to YouTuber apologies, she is the superstar. Nobody is apologizing more frequently than Tana Mongeau, and I don't think that's changing anytime soon. She is holding that world title belt, I imagine, so easily an A-tier YouTube apologizer. Next up, we have RiceGum's apology for promoting a mystery box company aimed at getting kids to buy a box full of wet farts. You get basically nothing out of the box for a high price, and he fell into some hot water for promoting it. And of course, RiceGum, being the pathetic worm that he is, makes an apology video where he basically just says it's not a big deal and you guys are wrong for getting outraged, and then gives away some Amazon gift cards that he personally used over a year ago. So he didn't even give away valid Amazon gift cards. The man sucks. This is an easy F tier. RiceGum himself is like a human F. Everything that man does is an F tier. If a fucking gas station toilet could speak, it would have more interesting things to say than RiceGum. I've never liked him or his content. I've always found him to be one of the biggest douchebags online, so this one's very easy to just slap there at an F tier. Next up is T. Martin's famous apology for the CSGO Lotto scandal. This involved more than just T. Martin, it also involved Syndicate, and those were really the two big ones here. A huge mess. CSGO Lotto was a gambling site that was used for CSGO and promoted by these people without them ever mentioning that they directly were involved with the site as owners. And when this came to light, I mean, it's a big deal. It's illegal to not disclose that you have an affiliation with that site or an ownership of the site. And there was this huge outrage about it, and T. Martin, in response, makes an apology video where he just brings his dog on, he gives his dog some little nuzzles on the nose, trying to make people seem like, hey, look, I'm human too, I love animal. And then look in the background, I have a fucking monster truck parked outside because I'm richer than you because I scammed your kids on CSGO. It's an apology video where he never takes responsibility. He says that, you know, things like, hey, I made it clear I own the site, I made it clear, even though there's plenty of evidence to prove that it was never disclosed, his actual involvement with the site. And it was just a huge deal, and the apology video is basically just spent with him rubbing wealth in the face of his audience, and again blaming them for not knowing that he and his friends owned it. So it's a great apology video because it does exactly what YouTuber apologies aim to do, which is take no responsibility and blame the audience for being dumb. It seems like most YouTubers think their audiences are the dumbest fucking people on the planet, so when they apologize, it really comes out, and T. Martin was pulling no punches with how dumb he thought the people that watch him are. And to be fair, if you're still watching T. Martin, you probably are pretty dumb. T. Martin's apology, I'm putting it a C tier, because it's pretty much the epitome of a YouTuber bad apology. It hits all of the beats and tries, like, bringing a dog in to make it more emotional, which is like some South Park shit. It really went in on being a bad apology. So I think that's definitely a comfortable C tier. Next up, we have one of the most entertaining apology videos, Laura Lee's apology video, where she was apologizing for racist tweets that surfaced from her past. Laura Lee gets on camera and does her absolute best to summon tears from her eyes for 5 minutes. She's trying to be like a tear sorcerer, where she's trying her absolute best to just conjure a little moisture in her eyes to make it seem sincere that she's sorry for whatever she's apologizing for, but she just can't do it. So she does like little fake moans and like tries to wipe her eyes, like scratch her eyes and make them forcefully, you know, leak some water and fluid, but she just can't. So it's 5 minutes of Laura Lee struggling to cry while trying to apologize and say how sorry she is. It is a beautiful disaster of an apology video. Truly one of the best. This, easy S tier. Laura Lee's apology, absolutely an S tier. It is wonderful, and there's really nothing else like it in the apology community on YouTube. It's really some incredible stuff. Next one to slap on the tier list is J Station's apology following the stunt he pulled where he kills his girlfriend, or his girlfriend was dead or something. I've already fucking forgotten. To be honest, all of the J Station shit is so incredibly stale. It was fun at the time but it's just so played out and tired. I don't even remember his apology, and I don't feel like going back and watching it, to be honest. All I know is that if it's J Station, it's just not interesting, so I'm just going to put this at an F tier. I think that's safe. I don't think there was anything wild about his apology, considering I've totally forgotten its existence until today, and I think F tier just fits. Now we move on to the absolute most popular YouTuber apology that currently exists on the platform. It is Logan Paul's apology for filming a dead man hanging from a tree in the suicide forest. Logan Paul, for those that don't remember, not too long ago, filmed a dead man hanging from a tree and posted it as part of his vlog. Like a sick fuck, he used that as part of the entertainment of the vlog. He'd be like, "Oh, it's a dead body? Whoa, it's a real dead body, guys. Buy the fucking Maverick merch, woohoo! Maverick merch, baby, dead man over there." I'm honestly still surprised he didn't go over there and just start putting Maverick merch on the corpse, to be honest. It was some disgusting shit, and it caused a huge backlash for Logan Paul, and really the platform as a whole. It was just damaging to pretty much everything and everyone around him. So then Logan Paul made an apology in response to it being the most popular apology to ever be posted, where he just says he's made a severe lapse in his judgment and the shit is bad and he's sorry. It was straight, it was to the point, there's really not a whole lot to dig into with the apology itself. It's just the most popular one ever posted with 58 million views, and he's apologizing for perhaps the most disgusting thing anyone's apologized for on YouTube so far. Literally filming and making fun of a dead body in a suicide forest. Like, that is super fucked up shit. So the apology itself isn't the most wild or crazy apology. It's just the whole magnitude of the entire situation, I think, leads it to being a B tier at least apology. So I'm thinking B tier for the Logan Paul apology. Next up, we have another big one. This is Social Repose's apology for cheating on another YouTuber named Jacqueline Glenn. And I actually made a video on this one where I called it the worst apology on YouTube. And to be honest, it still just might be. The drama here that he's apologizing for is he cheated on his girlfriend. If I remember correctly, it was multiple instances of cheating on his girlfriend, and his apology was basically not apologizing. If I remember correctly, he didn't even say I'm sorry a single time, and instead kind of put it on to her, saying that she just got too attached. She loved him too much, so he had to fuck somebody else. It is still, to this day, perhaps one of the most unbelievable apologies to ever be posted. It is baffling how anybody could have watched that apology and been like, "Yup, I look pretty good here and I think I've cleared myself up." It's terrible. It is still absolutely fucking horrible, and it is hard to sit through. It really is. So I think this apology from Social Repose deserves an A tier in just how fucking terrible and horrible it is, because it is wild. It is still wild to me that this ever got posted. I'm pretty sure he took it down, but the fact that it was even up for any length of time, it's crazy to me. Next up, we have Tati's recent apology. I think the makeup community drama is extremely boring. Each one of them is making like 40 to 50 minute planet Earth level documentaries about some petty fucking drama that happens, and it is hard to sit through. And Tati's most recent apology was no exception. Unnecessarily long, full of a lot of fake tears and moments of sincerity. It just doesn't work. It was not a good apology, and especially because the entire drama was about her, Jeffree Star, and Shane Dawson attacking James Charles because they wanted to serve him a slice of humble pie, as Shane puts it. It was terrible. All the drama was super fucking dumb. And then Tati comes out of nowhere, like over a year later, talking about, like, "I finally have the strength to go through this. This one's for my family. I'm finally gonna go over what happened last year." And the whole drama was they just wanted to fuck a young man's career because they didn't like him or were jealous. Like, it's not like you were some kind of hero coming out of, the heavens to grace us with this apology video and an explanation. Like, it just made no sense, and the apology video is super boring. I definitely think this is a D tier, for sure. The last one we'll be covering on the tier list today is Daddy05's apology. For those that don't remember Daddy05, you're very lucky. Daddy05 was a YouTube channel where a man and wife were abusing their kids for YouTube views. They were absolutely horrible to their own kids, one in particular where they would mistreat them for the sake of YouTube pranks. It was absolutely disgusting. It was truly abominable shit that went on for way too long, flying under the radar. It finally picked up steam and things were finally settled, where I believe that kid that was singled out and picked on the most was taken out of their care, thankfully, and their channels were shut down. So luckily it had a happy ending, but Daddio5, before the end, before the ship finally sank, made an apology video, and he still doesn't quite understand what people had an issue with. His apology doesn't address the blatant abuse that they filmed and posted. They would mistreat their kids for all to see, and yet they couldn't register it. They called them jokes and pranks and that people just didn't get it, and then their apology, they're like, well, if I didn't know these people, I'd think it was bad too, but knowing us, we know it's not bad, and the kids like it. So in the apology, it's basically them just saying, you have to know us to understand it, and the fact you don't know us, yeah, I guess we understand why you thought we were actually horrible fucking parents. But there's nothing joking when kids are getting tossed around, yelled and screamed at, lied to, forced to stay home on adventures just because they didn't like the kid. Like, it's terrible, terrible shit. And I actually think it is genuinely evil. So I'm super glad that Daddio5 no longer exists, but the apology video is still out there. And for that, the Daddio5 apology goes into F tier because it's absolutely just disgusting. It really is. That whole channel was unbelievably bad. Really bad shit. So these are the 10 apologies we wanted to cover on the tier list. I think these were really the 10 biggest ones that I could recall. And yeah, that's about it. See ya.